People who have been cheated on. What was the red flag that gave it away? Story 1. She was really hot then cold. She'd ignore me for days, then all of a sudden want to be with me nonstop. Then after a while she'd ghost again. I thought she just needed some alone time after we spent so long together, which I understand and appreciated. But I later found out that she would start to be distant when she made contact with someone else. Then have this hyper-fixated mini-relationship with them, usually culminating with her cheating. Then she'd come back and be all over me. I suspect out of guilt. Then other weird stuff. She'd be really cold on me for a while. She went to some camp as a counselor and was really distant the whole time. Then randomly sent me a bunch of naked photos of herself. Then not answer my texts because of the bad signal. But by then I had caught on. Those pics were for someone else, and I was getting second-hand nudes of my girlfriend from my girlfriend. We didn't last much longer than that. Story 2. A good friend of mine sat me down and told me my girlfriend at the time was cheating on me. They were friends with the roommate of the guy she was cheating on me with, and the roommate knew of me, so he told my friend. I was stunned, but it was just rumors still, even if they were solid ones, so I needed to confirm for myself. The flag wasn't quite red at this point. So I called my girlfriend, and immediately after she picked up, I point-blank asked her, "Did you sleep with dude's name?" She was silent for a second too long, then nervously chuckled and stammered out in a tone that can only betray that you got caught doing something terrible. "What? No. What are you talking about?" The flag was pretty damn red at this point. So I repeated the question, but added that a very reliable person that had no reason to lie to me told me. This time she didn't hesitate, and with a subdued, cold malevolence just said, "Who told you?" It was now crimson. She tried walking it back, claiming she meant she wanted to know who it was so she could know who was trying to get between us. But what she said, and more importantly how she said it, meant there was no coming back. I knew. She admitted to it after a few more minutes, having realized she outed herself. And after that we were through. Story 3. Less sex was happening, and she blamed it on meds. She constantly reassured me, and I didn't pressure her. After like 2 months without sex, I mentioned maybe bringing it up to her doctor, and she said she would. Slowly became less affectionate to the point where she seemed repulsed. But she kept reassuring me. It took me taking her out to a nice lavish dinner only for her to get straight to bed and go on Candy Crush when we got home for me to finally snap. I waited until she went asleep, looked through her phone, and got what I needed. She still denied and reassured me even in the face of evidence to the contrary. A week later, she told me that she fell out of love and hadn't loved me for months. But she never made me the wiser. Still icing that wound. 2.5 plus your relationship. I've learned in the future that if a relationship doesn't work for me, I don't need to justify it or expend energy trying to fix it. Sometimes it just stops working for me, and I need to nut up and cut the losses. But it's just like, you think you can trust someone. Story 4. We had been having some difficulty, and I needed to make changes to save the relationship. She started to go to therapy. I'll never forget the morning of finding out. We had a vacation planned that we were leaving that day, and I was working a half day at home. She was off. She slept in. I had been back and forth from my office in the basement to upstairs to pack. She was in the bathroom, and it sounded like she was pleasuring herself, but while talking with someone. After she had wrapped up her shower, I asked like it sounded like she was on the phone, and she made some quick reply that she wasn't on the phone and some excuse of "I can't remember" at this point, because I was certain what I had heard. So I waited until our phone bill showed the call, updates every 3 hours online. But while waiting, I went through the call log for previous months and noticed a boatload of calls from a certain non-local number of a state she had visited a ton for work. So of course, when the log refreshed, it was that number. I remember being an absolute wreck and trying to keep it all together and hoping for some way out of the vacation with her family. But my hints were swatted away, so an hour into the car ride, just us, I asked a bunch of questions that pretty much lead up to me knowing she was up to some nonsense with her co-worker and her finally admitting it. Once we got to the location, I was kinda stuck and didn't make a scene, but did manage to reach out to her co-worker's wife via text. Google is a hella thing when searching for a phone number. Story 5. She had been having an emotional affair with a guy from work, but said she wasn't talking to him anymore. We were on a road trip. She was driving, and I was using her phone for GPS since mine was messed up. She got a text from a phone number about seeing her tomorrow. She tried to play it off like it was a wrong number, but I recognized it was his and called her out on it. A few days later, on the advice of multiple friends, I went to our cell phone company and got a copy of her call logs. She'd been calling him many times over weeks, not to mention how many times he called her. It was always when she'd go on walks by herself at night because she likes the quiet alone time. Yeah, and the selfies she had on her phone of her looking sexy in a bikini or laying on bed were just because she liked how she looked. I can't believe how stupid I was to believe that lying cheater. Story 6. We were at someone's wedding reception. The bride and groom were cutting the cake, so most of the guests were up and paying attention to the newlyweds. I pretended to step away to go to the restroom down the hall from the ballroom. I had my suspicions, but like most cheaters, he blew me off and called me crazy. Said I was paranoid and delusional. Because everyone was so preoccupied with couples cake festivites, I got down on my hands and knees and crawled across the carpet on the floor behind our table and stuck my head under the table. They didn't notice me because he was too busy finger-banging her. She was too busy giving him a hand job, and both were engrossed in their selfish hedonism. They both snapped out of it when they were both hit in the face with water and ice from a large champagne bucket. Glad I drove my own car. After that, I got in my car and burnt out. He was stranded there because, to my surprise, she was there with her boyfriend, who was the cousin of the bride. Her boyfriend was her ride, and all of the people that the cheater knew had no room for him in their cars. He had to leave early because the public buses stopped running at 10:30 p.m., and he forgot to grab his wallet with his credit cards in it. He bought a new wallet. He put his driver's license and cash in the new wallet, but forgot the credit cards. Don't know what they told people at reception about how they came to be soaking wet, nor do I care. I am just glad that I finally caught him, so I didn't have to deal with his lies and philandering anymore. Good riddance. Story 7. I remember this one time with my ex. We went out for a day outing and came back home. We drank wine whilst watching a series, and she got up to go to the bathroom several times with excuses, and during one of those times, sent me a sexy picture out of the blue, which had never happened in our relationship before, so it raised my alarm bells. She then passes out on the bed and is snoring away. Although I was slightly intoxicated, my gut told me something was seriously off and to check her phone, since I noticed a guy's name pop up during one of the bathroom breaks. She told me that they were just platonic friends and that he helped her with her mental health issues, etc. I open WhatsApp and he's nowhere to be found on the general list. After a bit of looking around, I find that he was on the archive list. Turns out that they were playing a game of sexting each other during her bathroom breaks, and she slated me in the chat, saying that our last date was shit and that I was an ex. So I guess always look out for the small changes in behavior that give things away. Story 8. Almost 7 years ago, I was spending a lot of time with this girl who told me she was broken up with her long-term boyfriend from college. We were both about 25 at the time. I stayed the night at her house a lot, and one morning she gets a call, and it's just like, yeah, sure, if you want, kind of conversation. This girl was queen at keeping you in the dark about what she was thinking or doing behind your back, so I didn't even bother asking who it was on the phone. 15 minutes later, it's her ex. And granted, I knew him well enough because he was my best friend's best friend. He came by to bring coffee. The same coffee that me and my roommate, also one of his best friends, had drank there on several occasions, lol. He had also invited her to come to a concert with him and his dad, and she was just like, oh, that sounds great. You should definitely do that, your dad would love that. Just completely deflecting his requests to hang out. He had little reaction to seeing me there hanging out on a Saturday afternoon. We were just playing video games, and I thought at the time they were actually broken up, but he was just a good person about saying friends. Like 6 months later, I moved out of the state, and about a week after I settled in, I got a call from my best friend at the time that he found out me and his friend had been sleeping with his girlfriend. Turns out he was actually dating her the entire time and had even gotten her an engagement ring after 3 years of dating. She really messed with my head at the time, and several other guys. What's funny is she was transgendered and had a successful book/media tour that she was very proud of at the time, and I really fell in love with her after reading her book. I found out after talking with her boyfriend a year or so after the news broke. We made up since then that the book was fictional and entirely ghostwritten. Story 9. Got a good one here. My ex and I were on the rocks. Relationship wasn't going great. I was spending more time with one of my boys who moved into my apartment complex because I didn't want to be locked in the apartment with her. Came home and decided to prank her by sneaking in, and scratching on the bedroom door like some kind of animal lol. No response. Door was locked like WTF? Got my secret key and opened it. She's alone. Gotcha for a second, didn't I? Passed out drunk. Won't wake up for anything. I grab her phone to set an alarm for her for work. First thing that pops up when I open her phone is text to one of my neighbors, not my friend, talking about how bad she wants to jump on his dick and how my name is at his friend's house. He'll never find out. Tried to wake her up, yelling at her. Threw a glass of ice water at her. Nothing. Won't wake up. Just rolls around and grumbles. I called her mom and dad and told them to come drag her out of the house kicking and screaming if they have to. They refused. Next day she was out. The day after that she came with her parents to get her stuff. The dad tried asking me a few times if we could work this out. I told him no. Her mom was angry at me and asked me to work it out. So I just started reading off the graphic text messages that I screenshotted and told her to get the f*** out of my apartment. That was quite satisfying. In a great relationship with a faithful woman now. I know because I'm traumatized and paranoid and check her phone every once in a while. I know that's wrong, but it's the only way I can possibly be in a relationship now, and she understands and has access to my phone too. Trust is key. That doesn't mean blind trust. It means trust to be fully vulnerable, Mo.